Kyle Martinez floated in the cargo bay of his salvage ship, cutting through a piece of twisted metal with his plasma torch. The blue flame hissed and sparked as it sliced through the hull of what used to be a human warship. 3 years ago, this vessel had fought in the final battle against the Krell Empire. Now it was just scrap, floating in Earth's orbital junkyard alongside hundreds of other destroyed ships. He shut off the torch and wiped sweat from his face. The work was hard and the pay was terrible, but it kept him busy. It kept his mind away from the memories of the war, away from the faces of the crew members who never made it home. Kyle had been a captain once, commanding a frigate in the defense fleet. That felt like a lifetime ago. His communication device buzzed. Paul Chen's voice came through, rough and tired. Paul was his chief engineer and the only other person on the salvage crew who had survived the war. They did not talk about those days much. "Kyle, we got a visitor. Military transport just docked. Says Admiral Crawford wants to see you." Kyle felt his stomach tighten. He had not spoken to anyone from Earth's military command in 2 years, not since they had given him his discharge papers and a medal he threw in a drawer somewhere. Whatever Crawford wanted, it could not be good news. He made his way to the docking port and found Admiral Linda Crawford waiting in the airlock. She looked older than he remembered, with new lines on her face and gray in her hair. The war had aged everyone. "Captain Martinez," she said, using his old rank. "Just Kyle now," he replied. "I'm not a captain anymore." Crawford nodded slowly. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They went to the small crew quarters that Kyle called home. It was barely big enough for a bed and a desk, but it was his. Crawford did not waste time with small talk. "The Krell sent us an ultimatum 3 days ago," she said. "We have 30 days to surrender completely or they will destroy Earth, every city, every settlement, everyone." Kyle felt cold. "How many ships are they sending?" 500 warships. Their Grand Armada, the largest fleet they have ever assembled. Crawford pulled out a data tablet and showed him the intelligence reports. The numbers were impossible. "We have nothing that can stop them. Most of our fleet was destroyed in the last war. We have some defense platforms, a few patrol ships, but nothing that can face an armada." "Then why are you here?" Kyle asked, though he already knew he would not like the answer. Crawford tapped the tablet screen and brought up files marked with old military classification codes. "Before the war ended, we had a program called Project Frankenstein. The idea was to take parts from damaged ships and combine them into new vessels. The program was shut down because it was too expensive and too risky. But the plans still exist." Kyle stared at her. "You want to build a warship out of scrap." "I want you to build a warship out of scrap," Crawford corrected. "You have the skills, the experience, and access to more salvaged military hardware than anyone else. I need you to put together one ship that can fight. One ship that can buy us time." "That's suicide," Kyle said flatly. "One ship against 500? We would last maybe 5 minutes." "I know," Crawford said quietly, "but it is all we have. I would not ask if there was any other option." Kyle turned away from her and looked out the small window at the debris field floating in the darkness. Pieces of ships, pieces of lives, all drifting in the void. He had sworn he was done with fighting, done with watching good people die for causes that seemed pointless. "I have a sister," Crawford said softly. "She works on Defense Platform 7. When the Krell arrive, that platform will be one of the first targets. She will die in the opening attack, and there is nothing I can do to save her." Kyle closed his eyes. He thought of Amy, his younger sister. She had joined the military against his advice, wanted to follow in his footsteps. Last he heard, she was stationed somewhere in Earth orbit. "The same orbit the Krell would attack. What if I say no?" he asked. "Then I find someone else, and they probably die trying to do what you could have done better. And Earth falls anyway." Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then he swore under his breath. "How much time do we have?" 3 weeks to build the ship. Then the Krell arrive. 3 weeks, Kyle repeated. It was insane. Building a functioning warship normally took months, even with a full shipyard and proper parts. Doing it with salvage in 3 weeks was impossible, but he had stopped believing in impossible a long time ago. "I will need a crew," he said. "I can authorize anyone you need. I will also send you some specialists. There is a scientist named Nina Okafor who worked on experimental weapons before the program was shut down. She has prototypes that might help." Kyle nodded slowly. "Paul and I can handle the engineering. But I will need weapons officers, pilots, everyone. Make a list. I will get them here." Crawford stood up and offered her hand. "Thank you, Captain." Kyle shook her hand but did not correct her about the rank this time. If he was going to do this, if he was going to build a ship and take it against an armada, he might as well be a captain again. After Crawford left, Kyle found Paul in the workshop. The older man was repairing a power coupling, his hands steady despite his age. "So," Paul said without looking up. "What did the Admiral want?" "She wants us to build a warship." Paul stopped working and looked at him. "A warship? Out of this junk?" "Yes. To fight the Krell." "Yes." Paul was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Well, I suppose it beats dying slowly from radiation exposure in this scrapyard. When do we start?" "Now." They spent the rest of the day surveying the junkyard looking for parts that might work. Kyle found the hull of an old dreadnought that still had structural integrity. Paul located engines from a destroyed frigate that could be repaired. They made lists of what they needed and what they had, and the gap between the two was enormous. Over the next few days, Crawford sent the specialists. Dr. Nina Okafor arrived first, a sharp-eyed woman who carried cases of equipment that she would not let anyone else touch. She had been working on electromagnetic pulse weapons before the military cut her funding. She claimed her prototypes could disable entire ships. Then came Danny Cruz, a young pilot with more confidence than sense. He had trained on simulators but never seen real combat. Kyle was not sure if that was good or bad. At least the kid had not been broken by war yet. And then Amy arrived. Kyle's sister stepped off the transport ship in her military uniform, carrying a duffel bag and wearing a determined expression. Kyle felt his heart sink. "No," he said immediately. "You are not coming," I volunteered, Amy said calmly. "You need a weapons officer. I am the best you are going to get. I do not care. This is a suicide mission. You are staying here." Amy stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Kyle, if you fail, I die anyway. My platform will be destroyed in the first attack. At least this way I am fighting instead of waiting. At least this way we are together." Kyle wanted to argue, wanted to send her back, but he saw the same stubborn determination in her eyes that he saw in the mirror every day. She would not leave, and he could not force her. "Fine," he said quietly. "But you follow my orders." "No arguments." "Yes, Captain," she said with a small smile. The crew worked day and night. They welded hull plates, connected power systems, installed weapons that had been designed for different ships entirely. The vessel they were building looked like a nightmare, asymmetric and ugly, but it was coming together. Kyle named it the Defiance because that was all they had left. On the 20th day, with 4 days left before the deadline, Paul gave him the news. "The engines work. Weapons are mostly functional. Shields are running at about 60% capacity. She will fly, Kyle. She might even fight." "Will she survive?" Kyle asked. Paul shrugged. "Maybe, for a little while." It was the best answer Kyle was going to get. He called the crew together and told them they were launching the next day for a test flight. They needed to know if the ship would even hold together in space. But the next morning, alarms started blaring across every channel. The Krell had arrived early. Their Armada had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, 2 days ahead of schedule. Crawford's voice came over the communication system, tight with fear. "All defense forces, this is not a drill. The Krell Grand Armada has entered our space. I repeat, the Krell are here." Kyle looked at his crew. They stared back at him, waiting for orders. The Defiance was not ready. They were not ready. But ready or not, the war had come to them. "Everyone to your stations," Kyle said. "We launch in 10 minutes. Are we really doing this?" Danny asked, his voice shaking slightly. Kyle looked at the young pilot and then at the rest of his crew. At Paul, who had followed him through one war already. At Amy, his sister, who refused to run. At Nina, who believed her weapons could make a difference. At all of them, volunteers who knew they were probably going to die. "Yes," Kyle said. "We are really doing this." The Defiance shook as it broke free from the docking clamps. Kyle gripped the arms of his captain's chair while the ship's engines roared to life. Every surface vibrated, and somewhere below deck, something made a grinding noise that did not sound right at all. Paul was already working on it, his voice crackling over the internal communications. "Engine 3 is running hot," Paul reported. "I can keep it stable, but do not push it too hard." "Understood," Kyle replied. He looked at Danny, who sat at the pilot station with sweat already forming on his forehead. "Take us out. Nice and slow." "Yes, sir," Danny said, his hands moving over the controls with practiced precision despite his nervousness. Amy sat at the weapons station, running diagnostics on every system. She glanced at the readouts and shook her head. Railguns are at 70% capacity. Missile tubes are loaded, but the targeting computer keeps glitching. And we have maybe 12 shots before we run out of ammunition. 12 shots against 500 ships, Kyle muttered. Perfect. Nina looked up from her station where she monitored her experimental equipment. The electromagnetic pulse device is charged and ready. But I need to warn you again, Captain. This prototype has never been tested in combat. It might work perfectly or it might blow up in our faces. At this point, I will take either outcome, Kyle said grimly. The Defiance limped away from the scrapyard and into open space. On the view screen, Kyle could see the Krell Armada in the distance. 500 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. They are hailing us, Amy said. Kyle took a deep breath. Put them through. The view screen flickered and changed. Instead of the Armada, Kyle now saw the bridge of a massive Krell battlecruiser. And standing at the center of that bridge was Grand Admiral Vexthor himself. The Krell commander was huge, easily 7 feet tall, with scales that looked like dark green armor. His eyes were yellow and cold, and scars covered his face and neck. He looked at the Defiance on his screen, and then he started laughing. It was not a polite laugh. It was cruel and mocking, and it echoed across the communication channel. Other Krell officers on his bridge joined in, pointing at the human ship and making comments in their own language that Kyle did not understand, but could guess the meaning of. This, Vexthor said when he finally stopped laughing, his voice deep and rough. This is what humanity sends to face me? A ship made of garbage? A floating junkyard? Kyle felt anger rising in his chest but kept his expression neutral. Grand Admiral, I am Captain Kyle Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. We are here to defend our planet. Vexthor laughed again. Defend? You think you can defend anything with that wreck? I have destroyed entire fleets more impressive than your single broken ship. You are not a threat. You are entertainment. The Grand Admiral gestured to someone off-screen, and the view expanded to show the entire Krell bridge. Dozens of officers watched the conversation, all of them grinning at the human crew's expense. I will give you a choice, human. Vexthor continued. Surrender now. Order your planet to submit, and I will let you watch from a prison cell while we take everything you have. Or you can try to fight and you will die in the next 5 minutes. Either way, Earth falls today. Kyle looked at his crew. Danny was gripping the controls so hard his knuckles were white. Amy stared at the screen with a mix of fear and fury. Nina watched the Krell Admiral with calculating eyes. Paul's voice came over the internal communications, quiet and steady. Whatever you are going to do, Kyle, do it soon. This ship was not built to just sit here. Kyle turned back to the view screen and met Vexthor's gaze. We did not come here to surrender, Admiral. We came here to fight. Vexthor's smile faded. Then you choose death. How disappointing. I thought humans had at least some survival instinct. He turned to one of his officers. Commander Xylax, take the Razorwind and destroy that scrap ship. Make it quick. I grow bored of this. One of the Krell warships broke formation and moved toward the Defiance. It was smaller than the flagship, but still 3 times the size of Kyle's vessel. The destroyer accelerated, closing the distance rapidly. Target approaching, Amy reported, her voice tight. Looks like a destroyer class. Heavy weapons, strong armor. Why are their shields not up? Danny asked. Nina checked her sensors. They are not taking us seriously. They think we are too weak to be a threat. Kyle watched the destroyer approach. The Krell ship was not even trying to evade or take defensive positions. They were treating this like target practice. Danny, evasive maneuvers, Kyle ordered. Try to keep some distance. The pilot nodded and pushed the controls. The Defiance turned sluggishly, its mismatched engines struggling to work together. It was like trying to steer a building. The destroyer fired a warning shot that streaked past them, close enough that Kyle could see the energy weapon light up the view screen. That was a warning, Amy said. Next shot will not miss. The Razorwind fired again, and this time the shot hit. The Defiance rocked hard to one side, throwing everyone against their restraints. Alarms started blaring. Paul's voice came through immediately. Hull breach on deck 3. Sealing it now. Shields are holding, but barely. Kyle made a decision. They could not win a fair fight. They needed an advantage, any advantage. Nina, can you use the EMP device now? Nina looked up, surprised. Now? But Captain, if it fails, we have no backup plan. If we do not try, we die in the next minute, Kyle replied. Fire it. Nina hesitated for only a second, then activated her equipment. Charging the device. This will take 15 seconds. Keep them busy. 15 seconds, Kyle repeated. Amy, return fire. Danny, keep us moving. Paul, give me everything the engines have. The Defiance's railguns opened fire, sending metal slugs toward the Krell destroyer. Most missed, but a few hit the hull, bouncing off the armor without causing any real damage. The Razor Wind did not even slow down. Another shot from the destroyer tore through their shields and ripped a hole in the side of the Defiance. More alarms. More damage reports. Kyle could feel the ship falling apart around them. 10 seconds, Nina called out. The Razor Wind was positioning itself for a killing shot. On the view screen, Kyle could see their weapons charging. Energy building up for a devastating blast. 5 seconds, Nina said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Brace for impact, Kyle ordered. 3, 2, 1. Firing now. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the Defiance like an invisible wave. Kyle could not see it, but he could see its effects. The Razor Wind suddenly went dark. All its lights shut off. The energy weapon that had been charging fizzled out. The destroyer drifted forward on momentum alone, completely dead in space. But that was not all. 3 other Krell cruisers that had been nearby also flickered and went dark. Their shields collapsed. Their engines stopped. 4 ships disabled with 1 shot. It worked, Nina said, sounding almost surprised. The cascade effect worked. Their networked system spread the EMP through their communication links. Then let us not waste it, Kyle said. Amy, target that destroyer. Hit it with everything we have. Yes, sir, Amy replied, her fingers flying over the controls. Targeting locked, firing. The Defiance unleashed its full arsenal. Railguns, missiles, everything they had. The shots hammered into the Razor Wind's unshielded hull, tearing through armor and cutting deep into the ship's interior. Explosions blossomed along its length. For a moment, the destroyer held together. Then a massive explosion tore through its center, breaking the ship in half. Debris scattered in all directions as the Razor Wind died. The bridge of the Defiance erupted in shouts and cheers. Danny laughed in relief. Amy smiled despite herself. Even Paul's voice came through the communications, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. We got one. We actually got one. Kyle let them celebrate for exactly 5 seconds. Then he brought them back to reality. Status report. How bad are we hurt? The answers came quickly. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Shields down to 20%. The EMP device completely drained and would need hours to recharge. Ammunition down to 8 shots. The ship was falling apart, but they were still alive. On the view screen, Kyle could see the Krell Armada. They were not laughing anymore. The flagship's communication channel opened again and Vexthor appeared. His expression was cold fury. You, the Grand Admiral said slowly, have made a grave mistake. Kyle met his gaze. You underestimated us. That was your mistake. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. I will not make that mistake again. Squadron commanders, surround that ship. I want it destroyed. No survivors. No mercy. 20 Krell warships broke from the main formation. They spread out, moving to encircle the Defiance from all directions. These ships had their shields up and their weapons ready. They were not treating the humans as entertainment anymore. Amy checked her sensors and went pale. Captain, we cannot fight 20 ships. Not in our condition. I know, Kyle said quietly. He watched the Krell ships close in. They had won one small victory, but it had cost them everything. The Defiance was barely functional. His crew was exhausted, and now they faced impossible odds. But they had proven something important. The Krell could be hurt. Their technology could be disrupted. Humanity could fight back. Paul, Kyle said into the communications. I need a miracle. Working on it, Paul replied. The 20 Krell warships formed a perfect sphere around the Defiance. Kyle could see them on every sensor, closing in from all angles. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They were trapped. 90 seconds until they are in firing range, Amy reported. Her voice was calm, but Kyle could hear the fear underneath. Their weapons are charging! Danny gripped the controls, his knuckles white. Captain, do we try to run? Maybe we can break through their formation. We would not make it 10 meters, Kyle said. They would cut us apart. Nina was frantically working at her station, pulling up data from the last attack. Captain, I have been analyzing what happened with the EMP. The Krell ships are networked together, sharing data through their communication systems. That is how the pulse spread to the other ships. Can we use that again? Kyle asked. The device needs hours to recharge. But, Nina paused, running calculations. If we could overload it, push it beyond its design limits, we might create a bigger pulse, strong enough to affect all 20 ships at once. What is the risk? Kyle asked. Nina looked at him directly. It will definitely destroy the EMP device. It will probably overload our entire power grid, and there is a good chance it will tear the Defiance apart from the inside. But if it works, it will disable their entire squadron. Kyle looked around the bridge. His crew stared back at him, waiting for his decision. They could die trying to run. They could die fighting a battle they could not win. Or they could die taking a gamble that might actually work. Do it, Kyle said. Overload the device. If we are going down, we are taking them with us. Nina nodded and began the process. I need power. All available power. Paul's voice came through the communications, redirecting everything to her station. Shields are going offline. Life support is going to minimal. We will have maybe 2 minutes of air after the pulse fires. 2 minutes is enough, Kyle said, though he was not sure if he believed it. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power flowed away from everything except Nina's equipment. Kyle could hear the ship groaning, metal straining under the stress. Warning alarms started going off, but he ignored them. 60 seconds until they fire, Amy said. How long do you need? Kyle asked Nina. 90 seconds, Nina replied, not looking up from her controls. Kyle swore under his breath. They needed more time. Amy, fire everything we have. Target the closest ship. Make them think we are trying to fight. We only have 6 shots left, Amy reminded him. Then make them count. The Defiance's remaining weapons fired in a desperate barrage. Railgun slugs and missiles streaked toward the nearest Krell cruiser. Most bounced harmlessly off its shields. A few got through, scoring hits on the armor but doing minimal damage. It was like throwing rocks at a tank, but it bought them a few seconds. The Krell squadron slowed slightly, adjusting their formation to better protect against the pathetic attack. 45 seconds, Amy said. They are in range now. They are going to fire. 60 seconds more, Nina said. The device is charging, but it is fighting me. The system was not designed for this. Kyle gripped the arms of his chair. There was nothing more he could do. No more orders to give. They just had to survive long enough for Nina to finish. The Krell ships opened fire, 20 warships all shooting at once. Energy weapons lit up space, converging on the tiny damaged human vessel that had dared to fight back. The first shots hit the Defiance's hull. Without shields, the armor took the full impact. Metal tore. Hull plates buckled. An entire section of the lower deck was simply vaporized. The ship lurched hard, throwing everyone against their restraints. Paul's voice came through, urgent and strained. We have breaches everywhere. I am sealing what I can, but we are losing atmosphere fast. That includes the bridge. Kyle felt the temperature dropping as air leaked into space. His ears popped. How long can we hold together? Not long. Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe less. Nina? Kyle asked, his voice tight. 40 seconds, Nina replied, her fingers flying over the controls even as the ship shook around them. Another volley from the Krell tore through the Defiance. The engineering deck exploded. Danny's console sparked and went dead. Amy had to manually activate the backup systems to keep her station working. Kyle could taste blood in his mouth. His vision was getting blurry. The air was too thin now. They were all suffocating slowly. 20 seconds, Nina said. Her voice sounded distant. The Krell fired again. This time the shot hit the bridge directly. The view screen shattered. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing the room, but not before half the consoles were destroyed. Danny was thrown from his seat. Amy held on, but her station was sparking and failing. Kyle could barely breathe now. Black spots danced in his vision. He looked at Nina, who was still working despite the chaos, despite the lack of air, despite everything. 10, she gasped. 9, 8. The ship was dying. Kyle could feel it coming apart. Any second now, the hull would fail completely, and they would all be dead. 3, 2, 1. Nina hit the activation button. The EMP device exploded. It was not a physical explosion, but an electrical one. Power surged through the Defiance's systems, overloading everything. Consoles sparked and died. Lights burst. Every system on the ship failed at once. But the electromagnetic pulse that erupted from the ship was massive. It spread in all directions like an invisible tsunami, washing over the 20 Krell warships that surrounded them. One by one, the enemy vessels went dark. Their shields collapsed. Their weapons stopped firing. Their engines shut down. The entire squadron became nothing but floating metal, drifting in space, completely powerless. Kyle could not see it happen. The bridge was dark, the view screen destroyed. He was barely conscious, gasping for air that was not there. But he knew it had worked. He could feel it. Then slowly, emergency lights flickered on. Red and dim, but light. Paul's voice came through the communications, weak but alive. Emergency power is restored. Life support is coming back online. We have air again. Not much, but some. Kyle took a deep, painful breath. His lungs burned, but air filled them. He looked around the destroyed bridge. Danny was pulling himself back to his feet. Amy was checking her station, which was somehow still partially functional. Nina sat at her console, which was completely dead, smoking and ruined. Did it work? Danny asked, coughing. Amy checked her sensors. They were damaged, barely working, but they showed enough. 20 Krell ships. All dead, no power, no shields. They are drifting. For a moment, nobody spoke. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they were still alive. Then Amy added, "Captain, we still have 2 railguns that are operational, and we have clear shots at all 20 ships." Kyle understood what she was saying. The Krell ships were defenseless. Sitting targets. They could destroy them all. Do it, he said. Target them one at a time. Make every shot count. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The Defiance, barely holding together, drifting on emergency power, systematically destroyed every disabled Krell warship. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of careful targeting, of conserving their last ammunition, of making sure each shot hit a critical point. By the time they finished, 21 Krell ships were dead. The destroyer from earlier and now 20 more. Against a force that had seemed unstoppable, humanity had struck back. Paul's voice came through the communications. "Kyle, we are in bad shape. Really bad. We have hull breaches on every deck. The engines are barely functional. Life support is running on backup power that will not last more than a few hours. And we have no weapons left. No ammunition, nothing. Can we move?" Kyle asked. "Maybe. If we are very careful and very lucky." Kyle looked at the main view screen, or what was left of it. Through the cracks and damage, he could see the Krell Grand Armada in the distance. 480 ships, still perfectly arranged, still deadly, and they were watching. "They are not attacking," Danny said quietly. "Why are they not attacking?" "They are afraid," Amy said. "We just destroyed 21 of their ships. They do not know what else we can do." Nina looked at Kyle. "We cannot do anything else. That was everything we had. If they attack now, we are finished." "Then we better hope they do not realize that," Kyle said. He opened a communication channel to Admiral Crawford back on Earth. The signal was weak and full of static, but it connected. "Captain Martinez." Crawford's voice came through, amazed and relieved. "We have been watching the battle. What you have done is impossible. You have given us hope. But what now?" Kyle looked at his destroyed bridge, his wounded crew, his dying ship. "Now we need to repair. We need weapons, ammunition, supplies. Can you get them to us?" "We will send everything we have," Crawford promised. "There is a supply depot 3 hours away. Can you make it there?" Kyle looked at Paul's damage report. 3 hours would push them to the absolute limit, but they had no choice. "We will make it," Kyle said. Danny set a course. Slowest possible speed. "Paul, keep us in one piece." The Defiance began to move, limping away from the battlefield. Behind them floated the wreckage of 21 Krell warships. Ahead of them waited an armada that could destroy them with ease. But for now, they had won, and that was enough. The 3-hour journey to the supply depot felt like 3 days. The Defiance groaned and creaked with every meter traveled. Kyle stayed on the bridge the entire time, watching the sensors for any sign of Krell pursuit. But the enemy armada held position, watching but not attacking. They were waiting, calculating, trying to understand what had just happened. When they finally reached the depot, Paul guided the ship into the repair bay with the care of someone defusing a bomb. One wrong move and the Defiance would fall apart completely. Admiral Crawford was waiting for them with a full repair crew and supplies. But she had also brought someone else. A man in an old military uniform stepped forward as Kyle exited the airlock. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. Captain Martinez, Crawford said. This is Commander Greg Thompson. He fought in the First Krell War, back when we still had a real fleet. He has offered to help. Greg extended his hand. I heard what you did out there. 21 ships with a vessel built from scrap. That is either brilliance or insanity. Probably both, Kyle admitted, shaking his hand. But we got lucky. The Krell were not expecting us to fight back. They will be expecting it now, Greg said seriously. I studied their tactics for years. They learn fast and they adapt. Whatever you did to them, they are working on a counter right now. Kyle nodded. He had suspected as much. Then we need to adapt faster. Crawford led them to a briefing room where the rest of Kyle's crew had gathered. Paul was already reviewing repair schedules. Nina was studying the wreckage data from the Krell ships. Amy sat quietly, exhausted but alert. Danny looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. We have 6 hours, Crawford said, pulling up tactical displays. Our intelligence says the Krell are preparing another attack wave. 50 ships this time, with modified shields to resist electromagnetic pulses. They are not taking chances anymore. 50 ships, Danny repeated. How are we supposed to fight 50 ships? We do not fight them head-on, Greg said. He manipulated the display, showing the debris field where they had fought the last battle. You have one advantage. The wreckage from the ships you destroyed is still floating out there. Krell technology, weapons, power systems, all just waiting to be salvaged. Nina looked up, interested. You want to upgrade the Defiance with Krell parts? Exactly, Greg said. Their weapons are more powerful than ours. Their shields are stronger. If you can integrate their technology with your ship, you might have a fighting chance. Paul frowned. That is a huge risk. Krell systems are not designed to work with human technology. We could blow ourselves up trying to connect them. We are already risking everything, Kyle said. If we do not try, we lose anyway. Paul, can you do it? Paul looked at the display, calculating. Maybe. If we focus on the most intact systems, weapons and shields first, we will have to skip a lot of safety protocols. Safety protocols have not helped us so far, Amy said with a tired smile. I say we try it. Crawford activated another display. We have 12 volunteers from other resistance cells who want to join your crew. Experienced fighters. They know this is dangerous, but they want to help. Kyle looked at the faces on the screen. Men and women who were willing to die for a chance to fight back. Send them over. We will need every hand we can get. The next 6 hours were a blur of desperate activity. Salvage crews went back to the battlefield in small ships, cutting apart the destroyed Krell vessels and bringing back intact systems. Paul and his engineering team worked without stopping, installing alien weapons onto the Defiance's hull. Nina helped integrate the power systems, creating hybrid connections that should not work but somehow did. Amy worked with the new crew members, training them on the weapon systems and explaining the tactics that had worked against the Krell. Greg stayed on the bridge, reviewing every piece of intelligence they had about Krell formations and weaknesses. Kyle barely slept. He moved between stations, helping where he could, making decisions when Paul or Nina hit problems they could not solve alone. The ship was transforming. Krell plasma cannons now jutted from the hull alongside human railguns. Advanced shield generators hummed with alien energy. The Defiance looked even more like a monster than before. A nightmare combination of two technologies that were never meant to work together. But it was working. Against all odds, the hybrid systems were functional. 5 minutes until the Krell arrive, Crawford announced over the communications. All personnel prepare for departure. Kyle stood on the bridge, now repaired enough to function properly. His crew took their stations. The new volunteers filled additional positions. Everyone looked exhausted but determined. Status report, Kyle ordered. Paul's voice came through, steady despite the exhaustion. All systems are operational. The Krell weapons are integrated and tested. Shields are at full power. Engines are running better than before. This ship is as ready as it is ever going to be. Weapons? Kyle asked. Amy checked her console. We have 4 Krell plasma cannons, 2 human railguns, and a full load of missiles. Plus, the targeting system we pulled from that destroyer is way better than anything we had before. I can actually hit what I am aiming at now. Navigation? Kyle looked at Danny. The young pilot grinned. The Krell engine components are incredible. We are faster and more maneuverable than before. I can actually fly this thing now instead of just pointing it in a direction and hoping. Nina reported last. The power systems are stable. We have enough energy to run everything at full capacity. Though I still would not recommend pushing it too hard. This is all held together with hope and welding. Kyle allowed himself a small smile. Hope and welding have gotten us this far. Danny, take us out. The Defiance left the repair bay and accelerated toward the battlefield. On the sensors, Kyle could see the Krell force approaching. 50 warships in a tight formation, shields up and weapons charged. They were ready for a fight. Greg stood beside Kyle's chair, studying the enemy formation. They are being cautious, keeping close together for mutual support. They think you will try the same tactics again. Then we do something different, Kyle said. Danny, plot a course through the debris field. Use the wreckage as cover. Copy that, Danny replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. The Defiance moved into the field of destroyed Krell ships. Massive pieces of hull and machinery floated everywhere, creating a maze of metal. Danny threaded the ship through gaps that seemed too small, using the enhanced maneuverability to avoid collisions by meters. The Krell fleet spread out, trying to surround the debris field and flush the human ship into open space. Kyle watched their movements, waiting for the right moment. 3 ships breaking formation, Amy reported. They are moving to cut us off. Perfect, Kyle said. That is our opening. Danny, bring us around behind that destroyer wreck. Amy, prepare plasma cannons. Target the lead ship. The Defiance emerged from cover suddenly, catching the 3 Krell ships by surprise. Amy fired the plasma cannons. The alien weapons performed beautifully, sending streams of superheated energy that tore through the first ship's shields like they were paper. The Krell cruiser exploded spectacularly. The other 2 ships tried to respond, but Danny was already moving, spinning the Defiance around a piece of debris and putting them in position for another shot. Amy fired again. Another direct hit. Another kill. The 3rd ship managed to get a shot off. It hit the Defiance's shields, but the Krell shield generators they had installed absorbed the impact easily. The shield held. Shields at 80%, Nina reported. They are working perfectly. Kyle allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They were using the Krell's own technology against them. Amy finished the 3rd ship. Then we keep moving. The battle became a deadly game of hide and seek. The Defiance used the debris field, ambushing Krell ships that strayed too close, then disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. 3 ships became 5. 5 became 8. Each time they attacked, Amy's improved targeting systems found weak points and exploited them. But the Krell were adapting. They stopped chasing into the debris field and instead began destroying the wreckage, eliminating the Defiance's hiding places. They are catching on, Greg said. We are running out of cover. Kyle watched the tactical display. 42 Krell ships remained, and they were systematically boxing the Defiance in. Soon there would be nowhere left to hide. Then we stop hiding, Kyle decided. We go straight at them. That is suicide, Danny said. Maybe, Kyle replied. But they are not expecting it. They think we will keep running. Danny, full speed. Aim for the center of their formation. Amy, fire everything as we go through. The Defiance burst from the debris field at maximum acceleration. The Krell were caught off guard for crucial seconds. By the time they reacted, the human ship was already tearing through their formation. Plasma cannons fired on both sides. Railguns hammered targets. Missiles streaked through space. The Defiance was a whirlwind of destruction, moving too fast for the Krell to coordinate their response. Ships exploded in their wake, but they took hits too. Lots of hits. The shields held for the first few, then began to fail. Energy blasts tore into the armor. Hull breaches opened up again. Shields down to 20%, Nina called out. We cannot take much more. Kyle stared at the sensor display showing the Krell Grand Armada. 420 ships remained and they were moving. Not retreating. Not attacking. They were repositioning, forming up for something big. They are done playing games, Greg said quietly. That is an assault formation. They are going to throw everything at us at once. Admiral Crawford's voice came through the communications, urgent and worried. Captain Martinez, you need to fall back. Return to the depot. We can evacuate Earth, try to buy time. There is no time left, Kyle replied. If we run, they will follow. If we evacuate Earth, they will hunt down every ship. This ends here one way or another. He looked at his crew. They were exhausted, beaten up, running on nothing but determination. But none of them suggested retreating. Not Paul, who had been repairing the ship for days without sleep. Not Amy, who had fired weapons until her hands shook. Not Danny, who had flown impossible maneuvers through enemy fire. Not Nina, who had pushed every system beyond its limits. "Admiral," Kyle said, "do you have any ships? Anything that can fly and fight?" Crawford was silent for a moment. "We have civilian ships. Mining vessels, cargo transports, salvage tugs. We have been retrofitting them with whatever weapons we can find. But Captain, they are not warships. They will not last against the Krell." "The Defiance is not a warship either," Kyle pointed out. "Send them. All of them. Tell them to bring every weapon, every explosive, everything they can carry. We are going to need all the help we can get." "You cannot be serious," Crawford said. "Those crews are not soldiers. They are miners and traders." "Neither was I before the war," Kyle replied. "Ask for volunteers. Tell them what we are facing. If they come, they come. If not, we fight alone." Crawford agreed and closed the channel. Kyle turned to Paul. "How much time do we have before the Krell attack?" "Maybe an hour," Paul estimated. "They are being thorough, making sure they do not make the same mistakes again." "Then we use that hour," Kyle said. He pulled up a tactical map of the area between them and the Krell fleet. Empty space, nothing but a few asteroids. No cover, no advantages. Just open battlefield unless they made their own advantages. "Nina," Kyle said, "we still have explosives, right? Missiles, mines, anything that goes boom?" Nina checked her inventory. "Some. Not enough to make a real difference against that many ships." "What if we spread them out? Create a minefield between us and them?" Nina thought about it. "We could rig the Krell power cores we salvaged to explode on remote detonation. They are unstable anyway. Link them together in a network and trigger them all at once." "How much damage would that do?" Kyle asked. "To 400 ships?" Nina shrugged. "Maybe we destroy 20 or 30 if we are lucky. Maybe we just annoy them. But it will definitely disrupt their formation." Greg nodded. "Disruption is good. Chaos is better. If you can break their formation, they cannot coordinate properly. Individual ships are easier to pick off." "Do it," Kyle ordered. "Paul, take whoever you need and start planting those mines. Cover as much space as possible." The next hour was a race against time. Small work crews took shuttles into open space, positioning salvaged Krell power cores in a wide field. They linked the cores together with communication systems, creating a network that Nina could trigger remotely. It was crude and dangerous, but it might work. While they worked, ships began arriving from Earth, not many. Maybe 30 vessels total. Mining ships with industrial lasers, cargo haulers with missile pods welded to their hulls, even a few old patrol boats that looked like they might fall apart if anyone sneezed. But they came. Volunteers who knew they were probably going to die but came anyway. Kyle opened a channel to all of them. "This is Captain Kyle Martinez of the Defiance. Thank you for coming. I will not lie to you. We are facing impossible odds. The Krell have over 400 warships. We have one damaged vessel and a handful of civilian ships. Most of us will probably not survive this battle." He paused, looking at the faces on his screen. Miners, traders, ordinary people who had become fighters because they had no choice. "But we are going to fight anyway," Kyle continued, "because if we do not, Earth falls. Humanity becomes slaves or worse. Our children will grow up under Krell rule. That is not acceptable. So we fight. We fight with everything we have. We fight until we win or until we cannot fight anymore, and maybe, just maybe, we show the Krell that humans do not give up. Ever." The channel erupted with voices, agreements, shouts of determination. These people were scared but ready. They would follow him into hell if he asked. "The Krell will attack soon," Kyle said. "When they do, stay behind the Defiance. Follow our lead, target damaged ships, support each other. And if you get a chance to run, take it. There is no shame in survival." He closed the channel as Paul returned to the bridge. "The minefield is ready. Not as big as I would like, but it covers their approach vector." "It will have to be enough," Kyle said. "Everyone to battle stations. Here they come." The Krell Armada began its advance, 420 warships moving in perfect synchronization. It was beautiful and terrifying. The formation was tight, disciplined, overwhelming. They had learned from their losses. They were not making mistakes this time. Kyle watched them approach the minefield. The Krell did not detect the hidden power cores. Why would they? The cores were their own technology, modified to explode but still reading as friendly on their sensors. "Wait for it," Kyle said quietly. "Let them get deep into the field." The Krell fleet pushed forward. 50 ships. 100. 200? Half their force was in the minefield now. Now, Kyle ordered. Nina triggered the detonation. Space lit up with explosions. Dozens of them, all at once, tearing through the Krell formation. The power cores overloaded in spectacular fashion, creating massive energy bursts that tore apart nearby ships and disabled dozens more. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Kyle did not wait to see the full damage. All ships, attack now. Target the damaged vessels. The Defiance charged forward, followed by the ragtag fleet of civilian ships. They plunged into the chaos, targeting Krell vessels that had lost shields or power. It was not elegant. It was not coordinated, but it worked. A mining ship rammed a disabled Krell cruiser, its industrial drill tearing through the hull. A cargo hauler launched its entire load of missiles at point-blank range, destroying itself and 2 enemy ships. The human vessels were fragile and weak individually, but together they were like a swarm of angry insects, impossible to ignore. The Defiance fought at the center of it all. Amy's targeting systems picked out weak points with precision. Danny flew through explosions and debris with skill that seemed impossible. The hybrid Krell weapons tore through enemy shields. They were outgunned but not outfought. But the Krell were recovering. Their commanders began restoring order. Ships that had not been damaged by the minefield formed defensive groups. They started targeting the human civilian ships systematically. Kyle watched a mining vessel explode, then a cargo ship, then another. The volunteers were dying, sacrificing themselves to give Earth a chance. "We need to take out their command structure," Greg said. "Find the flagship. Kill it and the rest will break." Kyle scanned the battlefield. There, the Eternal Glory, Grand Admiral Vexthor's flagship. It was hanging back, coordinating the defense. If they could reach it, if they could destroy it, the Krell might lose their cohesion. "Danny, plot a course to that flagship. Fastest possible speed." "That is suicide," Danny said. "There are at least 50 ships between us and it." "I know," Kyle replied. "Do it anyway." The Defiance turned and accelerated toward the Eternal Glory. Every Krell ship between them opened fire. The shields that had been rebuilt with Krell technology absorbed the first wave. Then the second, but the third wave broke through. Hull breaches opened up across the ship. Systems failed. People died, but they kept going. Paul's voice came through, strained. "Kyle, the engines are failing. We are losing power across all systems. The ship is coming apart. How much longer can you keep us together?" Kyle asked. "Maybe a minute, maybe less." Kyle looked at the distance to the Eternal Glory. They would not make it. Not in time. Not before the Defiance fell apart completely. "Unless, Paul," Kyle said. "Can you overload the reactor? Make the whole ship into a bomb?" There was silence. Then Paul understood. "Yes, but Kyle, there would not be time to evacuate. Everyone on board would die." Kyle looked at his crew. Amy met his eyes and nodded slowly. Danny did the same. Nina gave him a sad smile. They understood. They accepted it. "All civilian ships," Kyle said over the open channel. "This is the Defiance. Fall back. Get clear of the area. We are going to finish this." "Captain, what are you doing?" Crawford's voice came through, horrified. "What we came here to do," Kyle replied. "Paul, start the overload." "Danny, get us as close to that flagship as possible. Everyone else, it has been an honor." The Defiance accelerated one last time, pushing through enemy fire with damaged engines and failing systems. Vexthor must have realized what was happening, because the Eternal Glory tried to retreat, but it was too slow, too big. The human ship was small and fast and desperate. They closed the distance. 100 meters, 50, 20. "Reactor critical," Paul announced. 10 seconds. Kyle reached over and took Amy's hand. She squeezed back. They had fought together. Now they would die together. But then something